are we already starting to see the influence of Deland McCullough on the Sooner run game personnel, and how OU is going to run the ball this fall?
They say consistency is the key, Chris Mason, and that's what we're being. Third night, right, of this
Yep.
week that we are here to talk some Sooner football. Tonight, people, we are a little bit solo dolo. We are holding it down for our guy Jason. Jason will be back sometime soon to definitely, give his tidbits about what he thinks is going on this offseason with the Sooner guys. But tonight, you got us, me and Chris Mason, both Chris's. You got Kchris Griffin, Horns Down Podcast, and Chris Mason, Sooners 360. Definitely go back to Monday and Tuesday for recruiting pods. We broke down just kind of the 27 and 28 respective recruiting classes, what's going on in both of those classes. And then also Tuesday, we talked about Isaac Coffrin, who verbaled this week. Offensive lineman, looks like a guard. We watched some film as well, so you definitely don't want to miss that. You can go and watch some of the film. We had some huddle film on there as well, some highlights and different things like that we broke down. So definitely go check both of those videos out. And then obviously Chris Mason dropped a pod probably early this morning from his Wednesday night recording as far as just more intel about the high school recruiting. So you got really honestly recruiting galore this week. So we're here to kind of break down things we're hearing about this offseason thus far in the spring camp. But topic of the video, as you guys saw, is Deland McCullough reshaping the OU room. Chris Mason, one thing I will say before we start, give a shout out excuse me, to our sponsor, Kaizen Performance Fitness. Definitely go check them out if you're in the Norman area. But with that being said, Chris Mason, your show.
Well, I just wanted to have a discussion with you. So I think we're already starting to see that when you heard the Arbuckle, when he's been talking about the running game, and you've been hearing Brent talk about the running game in terms of things they want to get accomplished, the attitude that they want to shift to, the changes they want to make, and we're already hearing. We've heard Gabe and Teddy talking about it. We've heard George Stoy and some other people talking about that. We're starting to see more outside zone. We're starting to see some more plays under center. So it looks like the OU run game is evolving and transitioning. And Chris, it's kind of a recruiting topic, but it kind of lends to what's going on the field a little bit of what we're seeing at practice. OU lost Micah Rhodes on Wednesday. He decommitted from the Sooners, and there was a little bit of it was a little spicy that he had an interview with Josh McCuistion on Sooner Scoop that kind of indicated that maybe OU disengaged from Micah Rhodes a little bit. That maybe this was Deland McCullough kind of maybe walking away a little bit from DeMarco's guy for 2028, and maybe he wants to find his guy for 2028 instead. So, based upon some of that going around, Chris, I took a quick look at the previous Deland McCullough running backs, and at Indiana, there are guys like Jordan Howard and Tevin Coleman, who were both 6'1", 225, 230. And then you think about the running backs he had at Notre Dame. Audric Estime is 5'11", 225, 230. Jeremiah Love is at least 210. I know he was at 2.7 at the combine, but I think that he dropped some weight at the combine just to post a 40 time. I think he's a little bigger than that.
How tall
And
is he?
He's 6 foot 6'1". So, and then you've got Zadarian Price, who's 5'11", 210. And then you look at, Chris, and then you look at the Sooner running back room that we as of today, right? You've got Rob, who's 6'1", nearly 238, nearly 240. You've got Jonathan Hatton, who, we're being told is 6'1", 230. You've got Des Walker, who's 5'11", 215, well on his way to 220. Even Lloyd Avant is kind of like 5'10", 210, something like that. And then the feature back that they have for 2027 that they seem to really like, that he was posting Boomer Sooner tonight. Hopefully that's a sign that he's still in the fold. Keldred Ben, he's 5'11", 225. So when I tell you that Micah Rhodes is 5'9", 180, I kind of wonder, Chris, if we're seeing.
Oh, don't forget about Blaylock, in there.
And Blaylock is 6 foot 210. He's the 205, 26, 205, 210 range. So I was just going through the guys that we're seeing in spring. Obviously, Torrey's sitting out. So, Chris, it just seems like perhaps we're going to see Deland McCullough emphasize bigger backs and going back to kind of the big backs that OU fans were used to, in the 2010s, right? From D.D. Williams to Joe Mixon to Samaje Perine to Trey Sermon to Rodney Anderson to Ramondre Stevenson to Kennedy Brooks. I mean, these are old 215 plus kind of running backs. So
when you think about his running backs, I mean, it's funny to say this, but he does have a type, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's looking for guys who have explosive, who are explosive in the run game, can make plays at the drop of a dime. But I think also, I'll be honest with you, I think he's also looking for those guys that he can mold and shape. And what I mean by that is those guys who can pack that weight and carry the weight that they need to have that NFL body going into the NFL, right? You get what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
when you look at somebody, I mean, obviously they do a tremendous job up there with the strength and conditioning at Notre Dame. I mean, you can't take that away. But you go back to what I think Tevin Coleman at Indiana, right? And you're like, he was not a small back by any means, So he definitely has a style of back that he likes, as far as some of the top running backs that he's coached.
Yeah, but even the guy before Jordan Howard, before Tevin Coleman was sick. He wasn't the guy that has had the NFL success that Tevin Coleman and Jordan Howard did. Both those guys were like 5-6 year NFL veterans. Even that guy was 6'1", 225, and I did a little research digging into it. So you just wonder if, first off, we're going to see an emphasis in a power running game, right? We're going to see an emphasis towards some outside zone. We're going to see perhaps less zone read and more called runs to support and help Mateer. And these are all sort of things that you would have seen under, I imagine if you went back in the film room, you would have seen a lot of this stuff under Kevin Wilson when Deland McCullough was the running back coach there. And a lot of stuff that Notre Dame does, right? Notre Dame, does, I don't believe I won't swear that I watch a lot of Notre Dame, but they're obviously they have a power running game. They're a excellent running team from in all perspectives. And they've had big backs. I mean, their other backs, couple of their backs for this year are in the 220 range as well. The Aeneas Williams kid and the other kid they have. So they've got big backs in their scheme. That's part of their scheme. So it just makes you wonder if, the new small back number that you need to hit for OU is to be at least 205 and be a burner, right? Be like a Jeremiah Love. If you're gonna be a smaller back, and what I mean by that is like 205 pounds, you need to be like an absolute burner, someone like Jeremiah Love. And we know Torrey Blaylock has that kind of track home run speed. So it makes me wonder if already he's only been on the job since, like mid-February? Does that sound right? Is that when DeMarco left?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Somebody said in the comments a couple of nights ago, the way that the offense is going, or excuse me, the way like with the coaching hires that we have on the offensive side of the ball, this could become kind of a downhill type of squad, right? You look at the coaches that you brought in, obviously McCulla, Witten, and how they try to transform those rules. You still got to see it on the field, obviously, guys. But I think that when you talk about the wide zone, you talk about the different things they do. Go watch. Go watch. I mean, obviously, if you want to, go watch Missouri. Go
Right.
watch Missouri. Go watch the Missouri game at the very least, and you'll see what that looks like.
And
But I don't.
that's two big backs, right? The
Yeah,
two guys they threw out there are big backs.
I don't think that you will marry it, but because I think that one of the reasons why I say, hey, look, I know some people are probably still saying, well, it kind of feels like Arbuckle's being tutored by Kevin Wilson. Why wouldn't you want to be tutored by somebody like that who has that? But at the same time, I think that it's not even that. I think he has the keys to the offense. It's his offense. But I think he can marry his ideas because he does not want to be the feeling I get from Ben Arbuckle, Chris Mason, not to kind of
Yeah.
deviate from our thing because this all goes together, but the feeling I get from Ben Arbuckle is the simple fact that he doesn't want to be married to one approach to the offensive side of the ball. He doesn't want to be labeled an air raid coach. He doesn't necessarily want to be labeled a power spread coach, right? He wants to be labeled a guy that can be very multiple, very unique, very different each time he goes out there and plays a team. Kind of if you go back to the '08 season, especially, but some of those years that Kevin Wilson definitely had us going, Chris Mason, let's be real. There were games where you came out there against Texas Tech thinking, yeah, we're gonna have to score 40 to beat them beat them tonight. You score 60, you score 60, defense is playing lights out, but at the same time, offensively, you're coming out there committed to the run. You're running, you're running strong formations, all stuff. I mean, all different things like that. You're running bootleg, all types of stuff. Then you come out against somebody else that you're like, oh well, you only need to put up 20 points to beat them, and yeah, you're scoring 40, 50 points. But you're giving them a dose of different things, and that's what Kevin Wilson loves to do. He gives you multiple looks. He will marry an idea that week, and then he can just, hey, we can on a drop of a hat, he can go and change that game plan. We've seen it time and time again. So, with that being said, I think Arbuckle, it all meshes real well together simply because you see that he's not hesitant to make this change. I want to see him be able to get to that GT counter that he likes to run because he runs some really unique things out of it. But I think that the wide zone, different things like that you sprinkle in to give these teams new looks, that is going to throw a lot of squads off because they're going to have to do a lot of different things, especially if Mateer has fixed the mechanics and can throw to these new targets that he has. Chris Mason, I think that, I mean, obviously we're not done talking about it, but I think the answer is yes. I mean, I think he's reshaping the room, but I think for the better. But as far as the type of back that you're getting, man, I think that you are looking for bigger backs, just kind of like Valai was looking for bigger cornerbacks. That was kind of his thing, right? But yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, like I said, Micah Rhodes is 5'9", 5'9", 185, 180. And OU, it looks like OU kind of separated from him. It looks like he came to visit OU on Monday, and he sat down with McCulla, and McCulla kind of laid out, well, this is kind of what I'm looking for at running back, and we want you to stay as a Sooner, but just be aware I'm going to probably be recruiting a bigger back in 2028 that could be my feature back. And I think that message kind of went down like wasn't exactly well received by Micah Rhodes, and kind of led to why he decommitted the next day. and why he made some interesting comments about his experience at OU. Because the only other evaluation is that Deland McCullough is a terrible recruiter and a terrible relationship builder, and that doesn't seem to sync up with the evidence we have of McCullough's previous stays and his work at Notre Dame, and the fact he still had relationships with X-Rob and Blaylock and Hatton from his days recruiting them at Notre Dame. So it's interesting that we've been asking for a commitment to the running game, right? We've been asking for a commitment to a more of a power running game, something that can help OU maintain and extend leads in the fourth quarter, something that can take some pressure off our quarterbacks, especially on the road in the SEC. And we've got road SEC games again this year. We're always going to have road SEC games rather and go to difficult places. We're going to go to Florida, Georgia this year, as perhaps the toughest two road games we have. It just looks like we've been asking, well, is OU going to do something different? Is OU going to make some changes based upon what we saw at the end of last year? And they've changed personnel at running back coach, and it looks like Deland McCullough is carving out a different way of doing things. He posted something and talking about a running back who's 2029 running back who's going to be on campus. And that kid is 2029 kid, so he just played his freshman year. I think that sounds right. I think I have that right class-wise. It's hard to talk about that a little bit in recruiting. And that kid's just a freshman. He's 5'10", 200 pounds, and he's directly mentioning that McCullough's talked to him and wants him to come to visit OU during part of spring practice. So you're already seeing perhaps that there's going to be a change-up or a different way of doing things from a running back recruiting standpoint, and it's going to be interesting to see what we get on the field. Will we get some signs of this in spring? I'm not sure if X-Rob is hurt or not. That's been flying around a little bit on some message boards. I'm not sure if he's out for the rest of spring. I'm not sure if I was X-Rob, if I was OU, I would just sit him. But if I was him, I'm not sure that I want to give Des Walker and Hatton and Avant all these reps, have him sitting out. But it sounds definitely like that Deland McCullough wasn't just hired to just simply recruit running backs and develop running backs. It sounds like he was hired. Part of the reason why Arbuckle signed off on bringing him in is they want to incorporate some running game ideas that he's obviously very familiar with. And I think you're right that Arbuckle isn't ideologically tied to a scheme the way Lebby was, right? Lebby was this is the Art Broyles way of doing things. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to run regardless of how much we need to run clock. I'm going to go fast, right? I'm going to have wide. The wide receivers are going to be wide. This is what we're going to do. This is the way I do things, and this is really the only way I know how to do things. It doesn't seem like Arbuckle is ideologically wed to a particular scheme that way. And we're in terms of we're doing things this way. It sounds like Arbuckle is wanting to adjust to what's his personnel and adjust to what he's facing.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the exact feel that I get from that. And I mean, it's crazy. You walk in and if that's what he told the kid, then I mean that's kind of what he told the kid. But at the same time, you kind of have that stroke just with the amount of talent that you've produced and helped produce. That's in the league or has been in the league, right? But at the same time, I mean, there there are some people in here that want to have that Jaworski lane running around, again. But at the same time, no, I'm really excited about the running back room and all the rest of that stuff. And yeah, those concepts or whatever. I think if you're a logical football fan, you kind of had to think that through, as far as they brought him in here for a reason, because he's going to be able to add some of those concepts there. I think that's one of the things that you have, is that especially the run game this year, you have kind of a three-headed monster. You want to mute him? You gotta
I'll mute my mic for a second. I'm sorry. There you
you
go.
gotta have like a three-headed monster, as far as just three minds that are out there thinking as and what can we do in the running back, in the excuse me, in the running game, with the Arbuckle, Kevin Wilson, and obviously Deland McCullough. So definitely not mad at that. So there's some unique stuff you're going to be able to see out of that run game this year. They have the talent. It's just about actually going and doing it. I mean, I keep saying that a lot. Sound like a broken record, but that's when we talk about the tight end room. Same thing. Talent is there. I mean, I don't need Hayden Hansen just to be a blocker. I need him to be a threat. We need threats all over the field. You need all of that. But running back room, the running game is what could truly unlock this offense into being something special this year.
Yeah, I mean, you take, you hear guys like David Pollock, J.D. Pickell, Josh Pate, all of these sort of national, pundits, all basically said, if OU can get an average running game going, we expect them to be in the we expected them to be in the playoffs. We expect them to be, we expect OU to make a playoff run, make a run, at Texas, make a run for the SEC championship. And when we talked about McCulla getting hired, one of the comments I made was like, you don't hire this guy unless you're bringing him in to take advantage of his run game acumen, his experience in terms of building a running game and building a philosophy on how to run the ball.
It feels like, and I think this is one of the first off seasons we've had where it truly feels like. I think the consensus of OU fans are pleased. I guess with the change, with the coaching change, and then also the simple fact that it seems that BV was really intentional about the two coaches that he brought, or three coaches that he brought in, right? Chris Mason, you don't mind real quick, just take a quick breather real quick. Students for Life, he says, too late in the game for Mateer to change his mechanics. You don't change your throwing technique in your senior year of college. Students for Life, I get what you're saying. Okay, here's the thing. I'm not trying to sunshine pump for Mateer, but what I'm trying to do is just basically say that I don't think that you're really asking him to change too much except for his foundation, just to make sure his feet are under him, not jumping. Second off, trusting his O-line, trusting the play and standing in the pocket, which we've seen him do, just not consistently at OU. We saw him do it consistently at Washington State with a worse offensive line, right? So when you look at what he's doing as far as just throwing wise, I mean, all he's doing is just throwing. He's throwing at a higher angle. I don't think he's doing anything else. At some point, I mean, Jason was right. At some point in the line of fire, he's probably going to revert back to some of those, sloppy mechanics or whatnot. But that happens to a lot of really good quarterbacks out there. They get pressures, but it really is dependent upon our offensive line. Which segues back, unless you have a comment on that, Chris Mason.
Well, I think, as you said, it's not just the arm level, right? It's sitting in the pocket. It's not drifting backwards and throwing off his back foot. It's not leaving the pocket too early when protection hasn't broken down. It's eye discipline and finding the open guy, right? I mean, it's understanding. This is why I liked when we heard that he was sitting down with Brent, and Brent was kind of doing, counter kung fu with him. Like, look, this is what you're seeing. This is what the defense is doing, and you need to understand if they do this, you should be looking here. There's a guy going to be wide open. They're trying to trick you to go here. You need to go over here because there's a guy wide open. And I think that's the. I mean, I don't think he threw the ball badly against Alabama. Or he was throwing the ball badly against LSU. He threw the ball in the wrong spots, and he was missing open guys. He was leaving the pocket a little early. But I think overall it's more about the other quarterback. You can focus on the arm slot all you want, but Phillip Rivers, had 19 years of NFL football. that got off the couch and played this year, didn't he? Did I remember that wrong?
Yeah.
And that kid, he's been throwing sidearm for his entire career. So it's more about the other pieces of being the quarterback that we need to see improvement from him. If we get some slight mechanical improvement, better arm slot, that's great. But I just want him reading the pocket better, standing in the pocket, throwing from a better foundation, and not bailing. And he kept bailing, right? He kept bailing into trouble and throwing off his back foot. I just want him to stop that action.
Biggest thing for Mateer is just to truly understand that there are going to be games, and to win a championship, the pressure's on you because you're going to have to elevate your play. But biggest thing for Mateer is one, stay healthy, and two, just understand there are going to be a handful of games this year where the South Carolina performance from last year is just fine, and that's good enough. That's what you call a game manager. That's the performance, right? There are times where you don't need to be sloppy. The defense will take care of you and be be one of your best friends out there. And all you have to do is just take care of the football, move the ball, score when the opportunity is there. Go sit on that sideline, rinse, wash, and repeat. Right? It's just it's the same thing. It's just a cycle, right? So there are going to definitely be games where, hey, all you have to do is just be a game manager. Keep it clean, keep the clock rolling. We're going to give you help. We're going to have a good run game. We're going to have a really good defense. So I think those things will present itself. But he has just up here mentally, he has to really let those things sink in. And I think that the word mechanics and all the rest of that is thrown in there a lot. And I agree with Students for Life. You can't change somebody's mechanics overnight, right? But there are some fundamental things. There are some traditional. I mean, some things that you can kind of tweak or help figure out. There's some things that you can look back on, reflect on, and figure out. So again, I think we're just asking for a healthy off season, a healthy year, full year for Mateer, and just improvements as far as pocket presence and other things. I mean, it's the same thing we ask about a lot of our quarterbacks. I'm not just talking about OU. I'm talking about just any quarterback in general that's going from year to year. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
not only in the SEC, but just college football. Period. You're looking for those things. I remember talking about Rattler, talking about Caleb Williams when they were here. That's what I always said. I said, pocket presence has to be a thing for them. They have to be able to maneuver around. We want to lead a pocket so early, and that's just typical of young quarterbacks, especially some guy like Mateer, who was in his second year starting and was starting in the SEC. So, not cutting him any slack, but I think there's things to be optimistic about, but also things just to simply be hopeful about, because you're hoping that some of those foundational things can be fixed. But that segues back to our running discussion, Chris Mason, and I want to tie in the offensive line in a little while, but I'll let you go to the next topic.
Well, the second topic I thought we'd talk about tonight is something you and I have been talking about a little bit offline, but I was talking to another Sooner fan of mine, someone I've done some podcasting in the past with, and the topic basically was, we were kind of throwing stuff around, and it says, and the silly idea I had that I'm going to run by you, Chris, is, even with multiple picks in the upcoming NFL draft, is it possible that the 2026 Sooner defense could be even better than the 25 edition?
Yes, I believe so.
When you talk about the front, when you talk about the starting 11 at the very least, I think there's a good chance that if Owen Heineke comes back, and everything's sort of trending that way, obviously we'll wait for the hearing, but OU seems to be everyone's sort of acting that way. OU with Kip, Cole Sullivan, Owen Heineke, and what we're seeing at James Nesta, I think they could be better at linebacker than last year. I think that foursome could be better than the four guys who primarily played last year. I think at cornerback, I think you could see that Jacoby Johnson, Cortland Guillory, and Eli Bowen, I think that threesome could be better than the cornerback play we got last year for the whole year, the whole totality of it. And I think there's a good chance that returning Peyton Bowen and Mike Boganowski taking over at safety, that could be better. If Jaden Jackson and David Stone are your primary starters at defensive tackle, and Jaden Jackson can go the entire season, that's the best D-tackle combo OU's had since Teddy and Tommy, probably. Or since Gerald McCoy and before DeMarcus Granger threw his back out and stole a jacket at Burlington Coke Factory in Phoenix. So I think it's the best. That could be the best duo. And everything we're seeing out of Taylor Wine just looks like he might springboard off the big year he had last year and play at an All-American level at end. And I know PJ's hurt, but Chris, everything I'm hearing, and this is echoed by George Stoyle, but I've been talking to some other sources of mine, is that Danny Okoye is having an awesome spring, looking like he might be ready to take over that spot and take the absurd physical gifts he have and start putting them, on the field with technique and all that. So I don't know, Chris, that's a starting 11 that I think position by position you could argue might be better than what we fielded last year.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with you, Chris Mason. I've been watching Okoye, and I'm like, I think everything is finally starting to click now. I think the weight that you were asking him to gain, I think the technique. Again, it's funny. I was telling my aunt this past weekend when you watched the breakdown last week. Iker was saying, Danny, are you that guy? Or are you just a good looking guy that gets off the bus, right? But it was funny because he made a comment. He said, it's like he only had 3 tackles last year, but 2 of them were sacks. And I was like, yeah. It was like,
And he smacked the crap out of the quarterback in one of them. Like, well, okay, yeah.
And he flashed. One of the here's something that was interesting. One of those sacks was against Tennessee, and you saw him stand up a little bit, and I was just like, man, I was like, he's putting stuff on the field on film that not only college coaches are going to be like, hey man, we got to watch out for this kid, but NFL scouts are going to be like, okay, so this kid can play with his hand in the dirt, or he can play standing up, right? That's the type of athlete he is, and that's what he presents. Don't get me wrong. We have Wine doing the same thing where he's standing up and doing things like that, but Wine is a freak himself, being 6'6", doing all the things he does. Do not get me wrong. But when you look at Okoye on that other side, man, Okoye does some things that just, you're like, wow, right? And last year, I've always coined it as that Marcus Stripling role that they wanted him to play, that trace forward kind of specialty, that fifth starter, right? You have your 4 co-starters basically on that defensive line or whatnot, and then you have that 5th guy that comes out there kind of in a specialty package. And you saw him flash. So you want to see more of that. And it's always been about consistency with him and getting his motor there. And so I think that you see the best ball from him. It's going to be interesting when PJ comes back and you have that trio with because to me, I think PJ could take another step as well, but he's technically sound. He's not a guy that's going to hurt you. He's only going to help you. But you got Taylor Wine, who could be a true difference maker, and then now Okoye, who could be a true difference maker as well. So now you're looking kind of at that 4th guy. But yeah, Danny Okoye, they're talking about him, and I'm more so excited about that kid this year.
Yeah, Nagy was talking on the Sooner Sports Talk show last week, and he was saying that NFL guys were asking him about Okoye last year. They're like, who is 16? Who is that athletic freak over there? And Nagy's like, yeah, he's still working on some stuff. They're like, why isn't he playing more? They're like, well, he's still working on some stuff. We're trying to, we've got some seniors ahead of him. We're trying to get him to go. And then Nagy used this interesting example when he's talking about Okoye. He said he was talking to some of his buddies in the Seahawks front office, and they were talking about how they needed to trade DK Metcalf to free up Jackson Smith. Najigba. Is it Najigba? Is that right? Was that right? I think that's close.
No, that's right.
Yeah, and they need to free up. He was ready to shine. It was time for him to take over. They need to free up so that he could be the alpha. And he said, he goes, that little bit reminds me of what we have with Danny Okoye. our Mason Thomas is gone. So, but it's freed up opportunities for Danny Okoye to kind of take over. He's like, he's got it all. It's ridiculous. He just needs to, it needs to slow down for him and all that. And apparently it sounds like it is. He's having one of those springs where, we keep talking about that OU's betting on themselves. Like you and I talked a lot about during portal season, and you were like, shouldn't we be adding a pass rusher? Who's going to be that pass rush guy? You were saying, shouldn't we add a defensive end? Well, maybe your uncle was insisting that we needed to add a defensive end. I can't remember if it was you or if you were paraphrasing your uncle. But I was like, well, we've got Okoye and we've got Gilmore and we've got Krell coming in. I'm like, we kind of got enough guys. And you're like, maybe I'm not quite. Not sure if we're seeing that. So. OU, because we had the same conversation about cornerback last year, right? Why didn't they pick up a cornerback? They missed on a cornerback. And they kind of bet on their kids. It looks like, Chris, that they're doing that again at defensive end, defensive tackle, maybe linebacker. They're doing that again. They're just betting on their development. They're betting on the kids that they have in the program.
No, I mean, I said that all along about that, but I think me and my aunt, when we were saying that, I think we were just kind of, you kept spreading that you want Wyatt Gilmore, and I was just like, hey, I'm just trying to say, if there's another guy out there in the portal, go get him, man. Because hey, look, I'm the only one on the panel that keeps saying it, man. A lot of things that are happening around OU right now is mainly because yes, they want it. They're talking longevity, but people, we're in a championship window right now, and it's not wide open, but it's open. And when you're in the championship window, you don't have time for false steps. But again, I've also been the one that said, hey, we're betting on a lot of kids. The Nigel Smiths, the Trent Wilsons, some of these new kids that we're bringing in, we're betting on a lot of people to be good. If Owen Heineke doesn't come back, you're betting on Nesta and Cole Sullivan to pick everything up quickly. Maybe, possibly, you could reach down to a Taylor Heim.
And Marcus James
Marcus James.
He just needs to take the blue. I mean, a lot of folks have been talking about Marcus James, how good he looks out there, how elite, and we know he's an elite athlete, right?
Yeah.
We know physically that when he was playing like safety and tight end for those Carl Albert teams that were just running all. Okay, sorry, I don't want to misquote you. We knew that when they were playing on those Carl Albert teams, they were just run ruling everybody in Oklahoma, football in their district. We knew those athletes were good, right? We knew how good those guys were, but everyone's talking about how good Marcus James looks at linebacker. Taylor Heim, is looking good. Nesta looks good. And again, we've got serious linebacker coaching resources to help, right? I mean, you've got Goodwin, Nate Dreiling, you've got, Rufus Alexander, I believe, is still around. Hell, even Caleb Kelly is still around, and so overall, it's interesting that I think it's, Chris, I think I either you said this or I heard this somewhere else. The only thing that we really need, I think, to get to see if this defense could be as good as last year is we need some combo of Nigel Smith, Bishop Thomas, and maybe Tank Carrington to give us in totality what we were getting from Grayson Halton.
Yeah, that's and look, I think I'll be honest with you. Watching the film on Bishop Thomas, I was like, hey, a motor. You ain't got to teach the kid a motor. You're just teaching him like, hey, this is how we play, right? This is how we do things around here. I was like, he could be somebody that's not. I don't think he's not gonna hurt you. He can be somebody that can help you and at least keep that middle clean, right? So those are the things that I think that you're looking for there. So, yeah.
I mean, you don't know how well he'll do after summer of strength and conditioning and working with Bates and in the fall and, taking advantage of the coaching resources and the other resources around him to raise his game, right? I mean, it's getting to the point where, Tank Carrington, apparently there's some scrimmage stuff floating around, and apparently Tank Carrington had a really good scrimmage, looked good out there. So it's getting to the point, and we've heard some stuff about Brian Harris, and all we're hearing is that Trent Wilson and Nigel Smith are having great springs. It gets to a point where it's just sort of like, okay, we just need to just understand that Todd Bates is going to improve our guys year over year. That they're going to get better year over year, and they're going to be. David Stone was good last year. He's going to be better this year. That Taylor Wine was better last year. He's gonna be better this year.
Let's
Yeah, this is an interesting. You want to talk about this question?
yeah, let's talk about this real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say if you're talking about, so let's just say PJ was ranked as maybe as high as like number 10 in the country at the end of the year. So if you just compare him to someone like Dylan Stewart, the South Carolina rush end, who was a top 10 defensive end like PJ was. If you're going to compare him to someone like Dylan Stewart, who's probably going to be a top 10 pick when he comes out this year out of South Carolina, when you're talking about that level of play and that, yeah, if that's what you're expecting out of a 5-star, like OU may get out of David Stone, then it's fair to say that PJ has underachieved. But he's not been a complete bust. He started last year. He's an excellent run-stopping defensive end. He's going to get a lot of reps this year. When OU has to play Michigan and Georgia in the first 4 weeks of the year, I want PJ manning one of those defensive end spots on early downs. I want him setting the edge, stuffing the run game, because we know Georgia and Utah are going to run the damn football at us all day. So PJ is not going to be lost.
You said Georgia and Utah.
Sorry.
He's a Michigan man now. What are you talking about?
You mean the Michigan Utes?
Yeah, the
The
Michigan
Michigan
Heat.
Utes. Sorry, Michigan fans. You hired the guy. You brought in a bunch of his staff and his players. Excuse me for the slip there mentally. Thank you, Chris, for catching me. We have to play Michigan and Georgia, and we're going to want PJ Manning one of those that defensive end spot on early downs. I mean, do we want Okoye wrecking havoc on 3rd and long in that? Yeah, we certainly want that too. But he's Benji. I think it's fair to say he's underachieved. But sadly, Benji, we've had 5-star busts, and we kind of know what that feels like. And OU's gotten more out of PJ than we've gotten out of those 5-star busts. So he's more of a 5-star. He was more overranked at a high school than anything else. I think he was just didn't recognize how raw he was, and his injuries the first 2 seasons hindered his development. And again, he's out this spring with foot surgery, so he's missing another developmental window, this spring. So yeah, I think it's if there's no continuum in here, and you're just saying is he a 5-star, is he an elite 5-star like David Stone? Then yeah, he's a bust from that perspective. But I think there's a little more nuance. OU's getting more of a contribution out of him than I thought.
All right. Chris Mason, anything else?
Well, like I said, there's a scrimmage that went on today. Some stuff starting to leak out about it. We'll probably have more of that content, by next week. OU, it doesn't sound like the walking wounded is a little large. There's a little bit of concern, I think. Benji, there you go. Jackson Arnold was number 10, and PJ was number 9. So that tells you what you need to where you are. Arnold's obviously working on the bust label himself at quarterback, but he's certainly not alone in 5-star quarterbacks not working out, especially among that class, especially in that class of guys.
Yeah, we talked about that class could be, what were we saying? Generational.
Yeah,
What's
I
another
mean,
word? Transcendent.
yeah, and they're just not playing well. So
Dante Moore is the best one out of them all, and you're just like, I mean,
and there's some fits and starts
in
there, right?
I'm butchering his last name, Nico.
Yeah.
I mean, here and there, Nico kind of shows you he flashes, but I don't. He just hasn't put together as a consistent body of work. And I mean, Tennessee. The problem with Heupel at Tennessee is that is it you question those quarterbacks. You're like, is it more system than it is that player? Because I mean, obviously, Hendon Hooker. I don't know if it's the injury or not. I think that he's had maybe what a couple of moments in the league, and everything else has just kind of been eh.
Yeah, it's it's a so they're not Aguilar's not getting the extra year, and they're going to probably have to play one of the two guys that they have on the roster, either the the two young quarterbacks, two guys heavily recruited, Faison Brandon, and then the other guy is George something. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it'll be interesting to see how Heupel does with with high school with elite high school talent after the Nico thing flamed out. So we'll see, but it's when you add in the 5-star quarterbacks from that class, the kid that went to OU and then decommitted, went to USC, and then ended up at Boise, and then ended up at UTEP. I'm not going to pull his name because he's just disappeared into obscurity. But that 5-star, he was another 5-star quarterback from that class. It's just crazy to think about, the Elite 11 list from that year and how underperforming those guys are really doing. Now, Trojan Fight will know who I'm talking about. Trojan, who's the guy I'm talking about? The Lincoln Riley, the first 5-star Lincoln Riley high school quarterback he brought to USC after he left Oklahoma. Had a shoulder injury and did like
Oh,
nothing.
Malachi Nelson is who you
Malachi Nelson, there you go. Who's like I don't even know where he is any longer. He was at UTEP. I don't think he's anywhere any longer. So from that perspective, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what I mean. Again, we're talking about.
hit my line. We could definitely figure something out. We can we can write an open letter too. How about that?
Yeah,
Let's start with that. Let's do an open letter first.
yeah. Thank you, Trojan Fight and Benji for pulling. I mean, I had banished Malachi Nelson's name to recruiting obscurity after he didn't make any moves at UTEP last year. But yeah, it's the 5-star thing's interesting because obviously OU has David Stone, who looks like he's trending to be worth it. We'll see what Michael Fasusi does this fall. All the
He's at
signs.
Syracuse.
He's at Syracuse now.
Yeah.
Okay, is he like third team at Syracuse?
I'll be honest with you. He may find a way out there on the film, mainly because I mean that old boy is
Recovering from knee injury
yeah,
stuff?
no, he tore his Achilles last year. That starter that had them actually like playing pretty good football.
The guy from Notre Dame?
Yeah, I guess the transfer that they got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from Notre Dame. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so you look at the 5 stars on OU's roster. It's Michael Fasusi, that's trending the right direction. Peyton Bowen, certainly had a good year last year. Is he 5-star safety worthy? Probably not right now, but he could be at the end of this year. That Seth McGowan is one of the guys you're talking about, Benji, who is going to be drafted out of Kentucky this year. And the draft, it looks like he probably might be a 6th or 7th round pick.
Man, we had Jaden Hazelwood, Trey John Bridges, and
Theo Weiss.
Theo Weiss.
Yeah, that's the wide receivers you're talking
Man, the
about.
trio that never was, man. Damn.
Yeah, and Weiss got drafted last. It was in the NFL. Did he get drafted last year? I don't think so. But yeah, it's
Yeah, the Dolphins.
yeah, with the Dolphins. So Weiss rebounded. It took a little while though, and Hazelwood is apparently cutting hip hop albums.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's trying to be he's trying to make his way there. So
Gotta find a lane somewhere.
yeah, got to find lane somewhere. So yeah, but OU's 5 stars. So far the hit rate looks pretty good, but obviously Jackson Arnold's career flame out, and let's hope he finds some success at UNLV. It doesn't help. Yeah. So definitely, it's interesting to see which way OU goes. We'll see. We'll see what happens. With Fasusi this fall, if he starts hitting, if he can play to the level that everyone expects, and start getting to that 3-year level that some folks have projected from him since he's been on campus. But Chris, I think that is probably 50 minutes of us giving these guys some good content on what we see with OU.
All right. Well, hey, people, look, definitely go and subscribe to all 3 channels. You got the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with Jason, at the Horns Down Podcast, obviously, with myself. Then you got Sooners 360 with Chris Mason. So definitely go check out all 3 channels. But when we're together, we are Recruiting Intel and Sooners Intel. With that being said, people, we will see you later. Shout out to our sponsor, Kaizen Fitness Performance. If you're in the Norman area, definitely go check them out. With that being said, people, will be back if something else